The wind from the rotors of the MH-47 Chinook whipped the dust on the ground into a brownout, obscuring the already faint desert moon. The ramp dropped, and the team of Navy SEALs poured out, their night vision goggles casting the world in an eerie green glow. They moved with the practiced efficiency of apex predators, fanning out to secure the perimeter of the landing zone. This was a high-value target mission deep in the Shorabak Valley of Afghanistan, a region so hostile that even the local farmers carried AK-47s instead of shepherd's crooks. Among the 12 commandos was a figure that, to the untrained eye, might have seemed out of place: Sarah Jenkins, a civilian contractor and one of the finest canine handlers in the business. With her was her partner, a Belgian Malinois named Astra. Where the SEALs were all hard angles and granite expressions, Astra was a coiled spring of explosive energy, her dark eyes missing nothing. The SEALs, however, they mostly missed the dog's intensity. They saw the handler. Lieutenant Duke Anderson, the troop commander, glanced at Sarah as she checked Astra's tactical vest. He was a man carved from the granite of New England, a 10-year veteran of DevGru. He didn't hide his skepticism well. "You sure that fur missile is going to keep up, Jenkins?" he muttered into his comms, his voice a low growl. "We're not chasing rabbits. Mate, we're hunting men who've been doing this since they could hold a rifle." Sarah didn't flinch. She'd heard it all before. "She's got more confirmed kills than half your squad, sir," she replied, her voice flat, devoid of ego, just stating a fact. "And she's housebroken. Can your guys say the same?" A couple of the SEALs snickered, but Duke just shook his head, turning his gaze back toward the dark mass of the village a click away. "Just keep her on a short leash. I don't need a dog barking and blowing our cover because she saw a cat." Astra, sensing the tension in the air, looked up at Sarah. Sarah gave a minute hand signal, a silent command that meant steady. She knew her partner. Astra was quiet. She was a professional. The real question was whether these vaunted SEALs could keep up with her. The patrol moved out, a silent snake of death sliding through the rocky wadi. For an hour, they moved, the silence broken only by the crunch of boots on gravel. They were approaching the target compound, a walled fortress of mud and brick, when Astra's head snapped around. Her body went rigid, a statue pointing toward a shallow depression in the earth 50 meters to their left. Sarah immediately dropped to a knee, raising a clenched fist. The entire column froze. "Contact," she breathed into her mic. "Astra's got something." Duke crawled up beside her, his irritation palpable. "We're on a timeline. What is it? A hedgehog?" Sarah ignored him. "I was watching Astra. The dog's focus was absolute, her nose working overtime." "It's not an animal. It's buried, deep," she pointed. "Right there, where the ground dips. That's a perfect spot for an IED. Command wire ran from the village to there." A SEAL with a specialized radar unit swept the area. After a tense minute, he gave a low whistle. "Got a void and a mass. Could be a pressure plate. Good spot. For a dog." Duke stared at the spot. If they had walked into that kill box, the command-detonated IED would have turned the first 3 men, including himself, into a fine red mist. He looked at Astra, who had already dismissed the threat and was waiting for her next order. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered, the skepticism in his voice replaced by a grudging respect. "What the hell is that thing made of? Radar beams?" The mission continued, but the dynamic had shifted. The SEALs, who had scoffed at the fur missile, now watched where Astra stepped. The dog, and with her incredible olfactory senses, had just saved their lives. But this was just the opening act. The real test was yet to come. As they finally breached the outer wall of the compound, the night erupted. It wasn't a few scared farmers. It was a well-orchestrated ambush. PKM machine guns opened up from 3 different rooftops, their tracer rounds creating a deadly spiderweb of light. The SEALs were pinned down, their exit route cut off. They were trapped in a kill box, and the only way out was through a hailstorm of lead they couldn't possibly survive. Duke shouted orders, his voice calm despite the chaos, but his mind was racing. They were outnumbered and outgunned. They needed a miracle, or they were all going to die in this God-forsaken mud fort. In that moment of pure pandemonium, Sarah looked at Astra. The dog was trembling, not with fear, but with the sheer, unadulterated drive to act. Sarah unsnapped the leash. "Okay, girl," she whispered, her voice lost in the roar of gunfire. "Show them what you are." The air was thick with the smell of cordite and the dust kicked up by the relentless impact of machine gun fire. The SEALs were plastered against the hard-packed earth, returning fire, but the enemy had the high ground and the advantage of prepared positions. A bullet whizzed past Duke's ear, so close he felt the wind burn. They were pinned down in a shallow irrigation ditch just inside the compound's outer wall. Their planned assault route turned into a deadly funnel. "Status!" Duke yelled over the comms. "Jones is hit. Grazed to the shoulder, he's good," came a reply from the rear. "But we can't move. They got the eastern terrace locked down tight." Sarah was crouched beside Duke. Astra, now a quiet, focused presence at her side. The dog's entire body was quivering, her eyes locked on a specific rooftop where the most damaging PKM fire was originating. It was a perfect position, protected by a low wall, offering the gunner a clear field of fire over their position. "We need to take that gun out," Sarah stated, pointing to the rooftop. "It's the linchpin. Once that's quiet, we can maneuver." Duke risked a glance, then ducked back down. "No shit. But we can't get a shot from here. And if we try to flank, we're crossing 40 meters of open ground. That gunner will chew us up." He looked at Sarah, his face streaked with sweat and dust. "Your dog's good. But she can't fly." Sarah didn't answer him. She was having a silent conversation with Astra, a series of minute hand signals and intense eye contact. She was pointing to the rooftop, then to the base of the wall, then making a circling motion. Astra's ears flicked forward and back, her body language shifting from coiled tension to absolute predatory focus. She understood. "What are you doing?" Duke asked, a note of alarm in his voice. "Getting you that shot," Sarah said. She looked at Astra one last time, a flicker of something soft crossing her face. "Go, Astra. Go loud." In a flash of tan fur, Astra exploded from the ditch. She wasn't running for the rooftop, that was suicide. She was running a tactical pattern using the chaos of the firefight. She sprinted low to the ground, a difficult target to hit, heading for a collapsed section of the compound wall. The enemy gunner saw her, a bizarre sight in the middle of a firefight. Then he paused his stream of fire for a split second, tracking the dog with his muzzle in confusion. It was all the distraction the SEALs needed. A couple of them popped up and laid down suppressing fire, forcing the other gunners to keep their heads down. Astra reached the wall and, with a burst of power that seemed impossible, scrambled up the rubble and disappeared from view. For a heart-stopping moment, she was gone. "Where the hell did she go?" Duke shouted. As Sarah had her eye pressed to her rifle scope, not on the rooftop, but on a narrow alley that ran alongside it. She was counting. She knew Astra's speed. "Wait for it," she murmured. On the rooftop, the enemy gunner, confused by the lull in fire from the dog, scanned the street below. He never thought to look behind him. Astra had used the collapsed wall to access the compound's interior and had scaled a rickety staircase on the far side of the building, a route the insurgents had left unguarded because it was deemed impassable. The first hint the gunner had that something was wrong was a low, guttural growl directly behind him. He spun, his eyes wide with terror. A demon in the shape of a dog was launching itself at him. Astra hit him mid-chest, her 70 pounds of muscle driving him backward. Her jaws clamped down on his gun arm, her teeth finding the soft tissue between the bones with terrifying precision. He screamed, a high, piercing sound that cut through the gunfire and dropped the PKM. It clattered to the rooftop floor. Below, Sarah heard the scream. It was the signal. "Now!" she yelled. "He's down! Move!" Duke didn't hesitate. He was on his feet and moving before the echo of Sarah's command faded. The rest of the squad followed, pouring through a breach in the wall that was now silent. With the primary machine gun silenced, the remaining insurgents were caught off guard, and their interlocking fields of fire broken. On the rooftop, the fight was brief. The gunner, despite his shock and pain, reached for a pistol in his waistband. Astra released his arm and went for the pistol hand, her speed and ferocity overwhelming. She wasn't just biting, she was neutralizing, a whirlwind of teeth and fury. She had single-handedly dismantled the most significant threat to the squad. As Duke and the first fire team cleared the compound's ground floor, Sarah sprinted for the rooftop stairs. She burst onto the roof to find Astra standing over the insurgent, who was curled in a fetal position, moaning. The dog was breathing hard, her muzzle stained with blood, but her eyes were clear and focused on her handler. She was waiting for the next command. Sarah dropped to her knee. "Good girl," she breathed, her voice thick with relief and pride. "Good girl, Astra." She quickly checked her over for wounds. Aside from a few superficial cuts, she was fine. The dog had performed a miracle. Down in the compound, the last of the resistance was crumbling. Duke's voice crackled over the comms. "Compound secure. 3 EKIA. Good job, everyone." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was different. "Jenkins, that was the damnedest thing I've ever seen. Your dog just saved this entire troop. How in the hell did you train her to do that?" Sarah looked into Astra's loyal, intelligent eyes. I didn't train her to do that," she said quietly, stroking the dog's ears. "She did that because she loves me, and because she knew you needed her, whether you believed in her or not." The lesson, paid for in blood and bravery, had been learned. The scoffing was over. With the compound secured, the immediate threat neutralized, the team moved into the post-assault rhythm of establishing a temporary strong point. The adrenaline began to fade, replaced by the heavy weight of exhaustion and the grim task of cataloging the aftermath. The medic patched up Jones's shoulder while other SEALs cleared rooms and gathered intelligence. But the mission wasn't over. Their primary objective, a high-ranking Taliban facilitator known as the Tailor, was not among the dead. Intercepted communications had placed him here, but the compound was a labyrinth of hidden rooms and underground passages. Duke stood in the central courtyard, his gaze sweeping over the buildings. The initial firefight had been a desperate defense, but the fact that the Tailor wasn't in the open suggested he was hiding, perhaps in a bunker or a tunnel complex the SEALs hadn't yet found. They needed to find him before reinforcements arrived. "All right, listen up," Duke announced, his voice brooking no argument. "We need to clear every structure, root and branch. We're not leaving without our package." He looked at Sarah and Astra, then who was now resting at her feet, her tongue lolling, appearing for all the world like a tired family pet. The earlier spectacle of her heroism was already becoming legend within the squad, but Duke was a practical man. "Jenkins, can she work? We need to find a hole we can't see." Sarah nodded. "She's tired, but she'll work. Just give her a minute." She knelt beside Astra, giving her water and a few moments of quiet reassurance. The dog's tail thumped weakly against the dust. She was spent, but her drive was infinite. They started with the main building. Room by room, Astra would sweep ahead, her nose working. She'd signal for weapons caches, which they found. AKs, RPG rounds, stacks of military-grade explosives.